Well, I say, you have to rise above this fear. Rise above this fear. Have a deeper understanding, a deeper love. The very fact that fear, there is so much of fear means there is so, that is, to that extent there is less of love.
Well, then it wouldn't be very good to have much fear for your guru. It would mean that you didn't love him, right?
And so until you have a deep love,
Oh,
it is good to have a little this. It's not it's not ordinary fear. Many are too sensitive, They cannot bear a little strong word. And what all you pass through will drive some of you away. What we pass through, we had to maintain great love. And such scoldings we had, and those scoldings will drive you away.
Does Maharaj scold all of his disciples?
Whenever the occasion arose.
Sooner or later they all got
Or later, but then the tremendous love behind, we saw that love. How many times we were just made to weep and cry. But after that always you had special touches of love and kindness. So if there are any wounds, all were wiped away. And those things that they told us, maybe with strong words, are deeply impressed in the mind. Even yesterday I was talking to this Swami, those were real blessings when you don't get the opportunity of these blessings. Now when one is deeply interested and either one feels like scolding, do you care to scold a stranger? Remain indifferent towards him. But when you get scolding out of love from one who is interested in you, that's a blessing. And act in such a way that you don't get this scolding. Our ego wants everything to be pleasant.
I felt that with Swami. Sometimes I ask him why he doesn't scold me more. I say that he doesn't care much because he hasn't scolded me for a month.
Well, don't be too sure. Someday a blast might come.
I'm always in hopes. Everybody thinks
Hopes
I'm
are
crazy.
fear.
No, I want it. How else will I get over these things that are obscure?
Mm-hmm.
You should stay here. I think you could give a good blast if you got,
If I want to, I can.
I feel that. That's why I wish you would stay. One of the reasons. Maybe you would bless me.
Here, Swami, while Swami's going away.
Hey, Yamuna, there are so many things for me to do. I have my unfinished work. In Europe, my unfinished work. Many people are just waiting for me. They have not seen me, they have not talked to me, they have not received instructions from me directly for years and years. And I have a responsibility towards them. So, the first thing which I should do is to finish the unfinished work. And some even started praying that I might go to Europe as soon as possible. Oh, yes.
Well, of course, this need of your being here came at a time, came late after all your plans for Europe.
Everything has been made. Some devotees are coming to Switzerland from Germany to meet me. Some, I got a letter day before yesterday from Holland. They are coming to France, June and July, and they would like to meet me before I go to Holland. And there are some others who have taken are going to take vacation about August so that they may be with me. This is too late.
So many plans have been made.
So many plans have been made. And I have been doing this openly for the last 6 months. You see? That is what I wrote to Swami Virajananda, our president, that if anybody has written to me to upset all my plans, that has not been done with proper justice to me. It is inadvisable. That is what I wrote to me, to do like that. But fortunately he didn't write. The General Secretary did. Even him I told all my plans. I've been making all these plans for last several months before I decided I should close the center. So it is all too late, and I am very glad Swami Prabhupada didn't write about me.
But of course you can see our need here. Our need is great.
Yes.
But of course that you should fill that need at this time, I think is too much to us. And too much to expect.
And
Much
then,
as we love it.
and then there are other needs. I have several irons in the fire already, and I cannot have more. Another thing, unless I can work here wholeheartedly for a time, I shouldn't stay. It will be a bad example. That is what I told Swami Prabhupada. I will be doing injustice to me, injustice to the work, injustice to all concerned. And that is the reason I refuse to be the General Secretary. My heart is not in the executive work anymore. And finally they understood.
Well, Swami talked to us about how we can meet this situation ourselves in case we don't have a Swami here. That's some of your wise counsel and advice.
Everyone should do a little extra meditation during this time.
Now, right away.
Right now, from now on you start, so that everyone can move smoothly. And that is one great thing we learned from Maharaj. Whenever there is any great difference of opinion between one Swami or another, or one work or another, he won't care to settle the dispute. First of all, he would intensify the spiritual life, and then he would bring in a tremendous harmonious spiritual atmosphere, and in that things will settle down. Now, in 1920, or rather 21, when he came to Benares, there was a lot of disturbance. And what he did, he stressed more spiritual practice. He introduced Ram Nam one day at the Advaita Ashram, another day at the Shivashram, the home of service, brought them all together. And some of the workers who did not care for monastic life, I mean formal monastic life, especially connected to the home of service, they were made to accept the monastic life. One of them just ran away, but the Swami's power was irresistible. He came and he was initiated into the order, and we saw this miracle taking place before our very eyes. And every morning many of us would go and sit at his feet, sit in his room, and he would be meditating with him. After that he would give us talks, all intensifying the spiritual life. And once someone asked Swami, why don't you ask them to do more work? He said, I am not to tell that. They will work by themselves. They have all got in them the tendency to work. So I want to give them the inspiration for walking in the right spirit. And that can be done only by stressing the spiritual life. Now some of us youngsters, were full of spirit of service. Would pick up maybe a diseased dog and would try to dress its wounds and apply some medicine. Sometimes we did in the wrong way. And I remember there's a stray dog and I was a student of chemistry. So I went to my laboratory, opened my drawer, got some iodoform, got some carbolic acid, diluted the acid and dressed his wounds. And then I was not quite sure if the right thing was done. So he went to a veterinary surgeon. He said, "You have done an improper thing because the dog licks his wounds and carbolic acid, neither iodoform are good." And now the same spirit of service used to go to these hospitals and attend on patients who had none to take care of. And with something of this spirit we came to these great Swamis. And they told us, well, your desire to do service to others is wonderful, but how can you serve others unless you build up your own character? Unless you have the right spirit of service, unless you have the right attitude towards your fellow beings, unless your service becomes a form of worship. And that spirit we could imbibe only through spiritual practice and spiritual culture. And the unity that we feel in our meditation, something of that unity is to be expressed through loving service. Service to whom? To the God in man. So a new outlook changed. A new outlook came, the old outlook changed completely. And none of us could dream we'd be coming to the West or elsewhere and just teaching and preaching. That was not the ideal. Our ideal really was self-realization. And one day I remember, in 1916, Swami Brahmananda took me, along with others, on a pilgrimage to Cape Comorin. I was very reluctant to talk to others about spiritual things, lest I would have the mentality of a teacher. And Swami Brahmananda called me one day, it was in South India, in Malabar. Now why did you talk to others and discuss spiritual things? I said, what should I say? And he replied, what you have learned from us, what you are trying to do in your own life, apply to your own life, speak only of that. And that's enough. And then, one day, after we returned from our trip to Cape Comorin, he said, write an article every week. I said, Maharaj, what shall I write? He said, my boy, learn to think, and thoughts will crop up with such a force that it will be a problem for you to control your thoughts. And exactly that thing happened. I worked for years and years. I was the editor of our papers. I talked. I have never felt short of words or ideas. But we must learn how to think properly. Another day in Madras he said, form the habit of study to such an extent that any day if you do not do some study you feel uncomfortable. And then he explained, now when the mind is on a spiritual plane it is all right. But when you cannot rise to that height, at least you will occupy yourself with your studies, studying these deep spiritual things. Now you may not see an hour, do a little extra meditation, so that the work may go on in a harmonious spirit, so that you may have greater harmony within yourself. Now a certain number of individuals should be working together, and they are supposed to work in the spirit of cooperation. Now if each one is harmonious, see, then all together will be able to work with greater harmony. I won't say even 1 hour, 2 hours, do half an hour, and have this ideal in mind, that each one of us should try to be as harmonious, as pleasant, as good to others as possible. And to bring in more and more the sense of unity, we are all like different parts of the same machine, different parts of a greater whole. So if we, all of us, if we have the ideal of the totality, call it of consciousness, and we each one would find our place in it, then work becomes harmonious. There may be difference of opinion, but that did not lead to any animosity or any antagonism or any disharmony. Sometimes we have to agree to differ. Even amongst our Swamis, all of us don't think exactly in the same way. We have our differences, points of differences. And sometimes we compare notes. Sometimes one will accept something of the suggestion the other gives. It is not a dead uniformity. Is a harmony means is a unity in diversity. Maybe this is a great experiment is to be made, the Swami's absence, and each one is put to the test, how all can work in a spirit of harmony.
So that's one thing that will hold the work together during his absence.
No doubt. It always to intensify. Whenever I find my ego is asserting itself, the best thing is just to do a little more spiritual practice and connect it with the Lord. See, if all our egos are connected with the Lord in some form or other, we feel we are all parts of a greater whole. So naturally in our work there would be greater harmony. And to have great patience with one another, even we must have great patience with ourselves. It is hard, but it can be done. And if one would make up one's mind, it can be done to a great extent. And whenever there is a disagreement and one feels like building up some resistance against the other, just meet, talk to the other person. And then as you talk about things, you try to understand the other's point of view, the other also tries to understand your point of view, and then something like harmony would be established. It is necessary for each one to feel the responsibility that we all should make up our mind to work in a spirit of harmony. And Swami Brahmananda used to tell us, your mind becomes your guru. There is deep meaning in that. Our mind does not become the guru, really speaking, used in a metaphorical sense. To the extent our mind becomes pure, to the extent we surrender ourselves to the divine will, that divine will manifest itself through our purified mind. And someone definitely tells us what to do and what not to do. In that sense, mind becomes the guru.
You can rely upon that very much.
Oh yes. But in a prayerful mood, in a spirit of self-surrender, pray for this guidance. And when the guidance comes, follow it. Sometimes it may be against your wish. It may be something unpleasant. But once you have felt you have got the guidance, follow the guidance, and then next time you will get it more easily. But if you don't listen to this voice, it will leave you.
You use the word felt. Is it a feeling that you get? Is it quite a vivid feeling?
It is a feeling, but it is really something more than feeling. Feeling is only a reaction of that which is something deeper than the feeling. It doesn't come only from our little self, it comes from a bigger self. From the bigger will, it arises. Now, take for instance, here is a little bubble. it wants to rise. And then it so happens there's heaving of the ocean there and the bubble is raised. It's something like that. A force comes from outside our little mind. It comes from the bigger mind. But our mind should be pure enough to receive it and to transmute it into action. And on our side, we should strive our utmost. Once had a long discussion with Swami Turiyananda about self-surrender. And I was arguing that self-surrender can be practiced without any great difficulty. And the Swami laughed at me and said, no, that's not true. The real self-surrender comes only after we have striven our utmost and when we cannot do any more. And he gave the illustration of Ramakrishna's parable. A bird sat on the mast of a ship when it was anchoring at some port, and the ship sailed, was on high sea, and then the bird wanted to return to land. It went to the east, went to the west, went to the north, went to the south, water, no sight of land. And its wings became so very tired, it couldn't fly anymore. And then it came and sat on the mast. And then in due course, the ship anchored at some other port, then it could go to the land. And that's the thing. On our side, you should strive our utmost. But don't strive too much with your muscles. I mean, not violently. Strive in a spirit of self-surrender. And with less energy, we can do more. So on our side, we should strive our utmost. And Swami Brahmananda used to say another thing. The breeze of divine grace is constantly blowing, unfurl your sail. Now the energy with which we speak or with which we work, is that our energy? And what are we? Cosmic energy is flowing through all these instruments that we are. And if the energy flows, then we are alive. If the energy stops, everything is over with us. If the energy stops, we'd fall down dead this very moment. We are not drawing this energy. This energy is flowing through us. And let us recognize this. The energy that comes to us is part of the cosmic energy. And we just happen to be channels. And to the extent we remove our obstructions, emotional obstructions, mental obstructions, even physical obstructions, to that extent more energy will be flowing through us in a spontaneous way. And we would have greater energy for our own spiritual practices and also for serving the Lord's cause. Now, ultimately, it comes to this. Through our spiritual practices and disciplines, we should be more and more in tune with the Supreme Will. Now, sometimes we find we have become awfully tense and we run the risk of being upset very easily. Now, here is an illustration Ramakrishna gave. If an elephant gets into a small pool of water, the water overflows. But if the elephant or if a number of elephants get into the Ganges or into a big lake, nothing happens. So when we become awfully egocentric, limited, selfish, and then if any emotions arise, you are completely upset. But if we learn the secret of expanding ourselves, many emotions may rise, but we remain more or less undisturbed like the ocean. So whenever we feel like become tense, whenever we feel like knocking against somebody, now let us try to sit quietly, do a little prayer and meditation, and have a little expansiveness. And when you have this expansiveness, you always feel a greater harmony. But when our consciousness shrinks, when we become like whirlpools, then we are in conflict with others. So all of us should watch. A friend told me the other day that he does in the morning, a householder, 2 hours of meditation. And after that he feels so tired he needs some rest. And he says, Swami, if any day I don't take any rest or enough rest, I am just at conflict with everybody. I make my life miserable, I make others' life miserable. We should learn the secret of relaxing. And relaxing means expansion. So anything that contracts our consciousness, contracts our mind, limits us, is to be avoided. And anything that expands us, really and truly, that is the right thing. Now, there may be some false expansiveness. Suppose, by telling some falsehood, I get something from somebody, and as a result of getting that thing, I feel little elated, but that won't last long. I have done something wrong, my conscience disapproves it, and then that makes me ultimately shrunken. But if I have done the right thing, even at the risk of undergoing some unpleasantness, if that unpleasantness shrinks me a little, later on it will lead to an expansiveness because I have done the right thing. And that's the test. Are the things that we are doing, is our meditation, our services and all that, are they bringing us expansiveness? What is called chitta prasada. Actually, do they bring us expansiveness, or do they contract our mind and contract our consciousness? If we have expansiveness, we are moving in the right direction. And that's the thing we should always watch. After meditation, do you become more tense or you feel more relaxed? Sometimes, of course, we may have to pass to an amount of tenseness in order to have greater expansiveness and greater harmony. That is all right.
During that time of tenseness, should you just sit with it and wait and continue those spiritual practices sort of undisturbed? Or should you sort of find a way to release this tenseness? I mean, say, for instance, a walk or a show or something like that.
If you get this tenseness as you sit for meditation, if by continuing your meditation for a little while, you can get rid of this tenseness, then continue your meditation. But sometimes it may be advisable, to go about a little, move about a little, and then come back. Or maybe sometimes you are feeling sleepy as you meditate. And now, sometimes with the effort of the will we may get over this drowsiness. And if it is overpowering, then pace to and fro a little, and or somehow or other wash your eyes or do something, swing some water on your face, get rid of it.
I go to sleep right in the shrine.
If the mind is very restless and it keeps going out into this thought, into that thought again and again, and the effort of trying to bring it back and put it you know not where because you don't know your ideal, you just believe that it is there to be known. You don't, at least for myself, I don't know it. And the effort of bringing it back seems to sometimes make it more tense, actually.
No doubt,
I haven't thought
no doubt.
in those terms of expansiveness and tenseness. in the case.
Well, that's a stage, but as our ideal becomes more and more living, as we love the ideal more and more, shifting our consciousness from something that is not worthwhile to this ideal is easier. So our love for the ideal should become greater than the restlessness in due course. But until we have this love, through reasoning, let us convince ourselves this ideal or meditation on this ideal is more worthwhile than the wandering of the mind.
So you should accept that tenseness of the effort of pulling it back. the mind
Pulling it back. But even then, as we pull it back, we can minimize this tension. For this reason, a certain posture, a little breathing exercise, maybe rhythmic breathing, and things like that is a great help. And more than that, this aspiration. Now, if we are accustomed to eating at a particular hour, our whole system just is inclined to eat, is in a mood, as it were, to eat. So the juices, gastric juices, they start secreting and so on. Similarly, if we have some fixed hour for meditation, and if we have the inclination to practice meditation, then at that right hour, more or less automatically we are thrown into some kind of mood. Let us avail ourselves of that. And in that mood we are able to have better meditation. So all this, the disciplines of the what we call this little moral practice and posture and breathing and learning the technique of withdrawing of the mind, all these are meant for the creating the mood.
By breathing, you don't mean pranayama.
No, you may do this alternate breathing you may do, or rhythmic breathing.
But not holding the breath.
That will depend on the instruction you receive from the teacher. For some,
Just
even
rhythmic breathing, you mean by just...
take deep breath in a harmonious way.
This is something I've never heard about.
Well, you have
I mean, Swami, to bring out the point that's in my mind, as you may gather, is very much against pranayama or anything
no,
of
I'm
that
not
nature.
speaking of
so-
pranayama, but rhythmic breathing.
So anything of that
That is,
nature, he doesn't have
even
anything
sometimes
to do
on
with.
radio they give the instruction, you see, about rhythmic breathing. Alternate rhythmic breathing, and Swamiji speaks of alternate breathing. They are very good, but they are not essential.
But just as an aid to quiet the
Just
mind.
as an aid. And pranayama is to be done only under the special guidance of the teacher. Some people do it in a little amateurish way, it doesn't matter. But if you want to do real pranayama, one must have instructions from the teacher. Because our physiological condition, our mental condition, our environment must be proper. Otherwise you may strain your machine too much by controlling of the breath, or controlling of the energy. It may go even out of order.
Well, you said there is a technique for withdrawing the mind from the external objects. What is the technique?
In the technique, the first thing is to intensify our love for the object of meditation. I want to draw my mind away from things that are harmful. Have I enough love for that which is helpful to me?
How do you gain that love? The love is essential before you learn the technique then.
There should be an amount of love. How does it come, do you know? God is there in every heart. And the very fact that you feel spiritually inclined shows, the God in you wants to awake, wants to assert itself. Because here, the object of spiritual love is not something fanciful. It is there. Our misfortune is we do not know it. But the more we think of it, and the more we meditate on it, as contrary thoughts are removed, this thought of the divine reality becomes stronger and stronger. Because here the object of love, call him God, give him any name, is not something fanciful. It is real, it is there. Only we must experience it, we must know it, we must be conscious of it. Now meditating on God is not like meditating on a castle in the air. Meditating on God is not like, as they say, meditating on a hare with horns. There is no such a thing as a hare with horns. You may paint wonderful pictures, but you can never find a hare with horns. Now, one would say that is a fancy. Yes, it is a fancy. Someone will say, well, think of God, you are also imagining. Yes, I am imagining. But I am here, when I think of God, I am imagining something that is real. While in the other case, I am imagining something that has no objective counterpart, can never be realized. But when I think of God as light or the spirit or whatever it is, or when I think of a God-man or a divine incarnation, he exists. I am here imagining, but I am imagining something that is real, or something that can be realized someday. And as we think more and more of that, a taste is created. As you repeat the divine name and think of the Lord, now a taste is created. Because as a result of your japam, a harmonious state is brought about, and someday maybe there is a little awakening of the consciousness, and what you have been meditating on becomes little living then. And that shows that which I have been meditating on is real. It is even more real than your own personality. So after one gets a little glimpse, one's faith is strengthened. And unless one gets this glimpse or gets an experience, here we feel the need of what is called faith, Shraddha, our Sanskrit word, as Swami spoke of it, Guru Vedanta Vakyeshu Attanta Vishwasaha, faith, or call it belief, or trust in the words of the teacher and the words of the scriptures which are records of the experiences of those who came before us. But all this will be efficacious if there is little hunger in us, spiritual yearning. Don't you know this? The parable of the master, the child was going to bed and said, Mommy, if I feel hungry, please wake me up. And Mommy naturally said, I am not worried about that, your hunger will wake you up. It's like a hunger. It's like a tremendous thirst, which nothing in the world can satisfy.
That might be also due to some of that tenseness that you may possess, because you can't have that satisfaction, and you realize there's something that you desire or want, and so that tenseness comes, and you remain that way, not knowing what it is. Is there a possibility of that?
Yes, but it can be dispensed with. Patanjali, in his yoga aphorisms, stresses japam, repetition of the divine name. Do it constantly, or for a time every day. Now what happens? This experiment has been made by countless people, and here we have a record of the experiments made. Now as you repeat the divine name and think of the divine name is a harmonious sound. Divine idea is a very harmonious idea. And as one repeats the divine name, a great harmony is produced within, and it has a reaction on the body. So part of the tenseness will go. And Patanjali says disease, lack of energy, and yearning for sense enjoyments, all these gradually disappear as one repeats the divine name. And we have seen that in our own lives, in lives of others. And as one continues to repeat the divine name, one comes to have, Patanjali says, a new awakening that reveals to you inner truths. So on one side, obstacles are removed, physical obstacles, mental obstacles, this lack of energy, idleness, laziness, sloth. Now, these are minimized, and along with that, as the obstacles are removed, a new consciousness rises. Do japam regularly for some time, you will feel, maybe someday, as you continue your japam, you feel a little intoxicated. You feel a little presence of something within. That cannot come all of a sudden. Our great trouble is our desires, various kinds of desires. And Nag Mahasaya, have you read his life? Durgachar Nag. And Maharaj even quoted him. He says, an anchored boat does not move. There is a story, behind it is a story. Some drunkards wanted to have a boat ride. And they were nicely drunk, they got into the boats, sat at the oars, went on rowing and rowing. And early morning, when the effects of the drink were gone, they found they were where they were. What happened to them? They forgot to raise the anchor. So Nag Mahasaya said that an anchored boat does not move. And for this reason, desires are to be minimized. See, if some people say, oh, I am not progressing anyway, I am doing so much of practice. Well, it's just like an anchored boat. So when there are various desires tying us to the things of the world, and then we are striving, doing japam, japam is no good. It will have some effect, but in order to get the full effect, we should have minimum what Patanjali says, these moral qualities, yama and niyama, yama especially, ahimsa, non-injury, satya, truthfulness, and non-covetousness, chastity, and so on. And to the extent we succeed in having these qualities, we also succeed in having better meditation.
How would you define grace of one's own mind? That's such an abstract. Well, how would you define it?
What?
How would you define grace of one's own mind?
Aha. Mind must be inclined, open to the truth. And that also Swami Brahmananda used to tell us, and is an ancient saying. Guru Krishna Vaishnava Tinedaya Holo. One has got the grace of the teacher, has got spiritual instructions. Guru, one has got the grace of Krishna, of the Lord. One has got the grace of the devotees of the Lord. But Aket Daya Bine, without the grace of one, the soul comes to utter ruin. That is the grace of your own mind. Now, grace of our own mind means our mind must be open to the truth. And Swami Brahmananda said, now, through spiritual practices, acquire the grace of your own mind. So, as we undergo the spiritual practices, as we feel the presence of something deeper, something higher, something nobler, something spiritual, our mind feels that is more real than all the sense experience we possess. There is something deeper in our consciousness which is more real than all the passing things of the world. And as we feel that reality to be greater than the reality of the passing things of the world, our mind naturally becomes open to the truth. Grace of one's own mind is, our mind must be open to the truth. There should be deep spiritual yearning. And grace comes through spiritual practice. And then we must have the grace of our own mind, and the grace and the divine grace. The breeze of divine grace is always good. This is how we look at our spiritual problem. Shankara refers to that in the Christian of Vedanta. Manushyatam, mumukshattam, mahapurusha samsraya, a human birth. Mumukshattam, desire to be free, and instructions from a great soul. These three one gets through grace of God. So from this point of view, our spiritual striving itself is the grace of God. Our yearning, spiritual yearning is the grace of God. To be able to strive along the spiritual line is the grace of God. And the grace of God comes in various ways. Now, this grace of God comes to us in an indirect way. And then when the truth flashes, that is again the highest manifestation of grace of God. But on our side, striving. I remember in 1911 when I joined the order, Swami Brahmananda decided to send me to South India for my training, to Madras. And I asked him, Maharaj, what should I do? He repeated 3 words at Puri. I still have the picture before me. He said 3 words, struggle. Through struggle we grow. Through struggle we grow.
After you study, the light came.
No, yes. It is not that light.
That is the flash of truth.
It is not that light. That light of the truth which shines in our heart.
Yeah, but what happens if the Lord withdraws His grace? And then you're left.
I don't know if He withdraws. Sometimes we may create such obstacles we may feel the grace is being withdrawn. Sun can never withdraw its light. But we may create such a cloud around us we don't get the benefit of the
What's the technique of seeing through that cloud then?
dispel the cloud. Through spiritual practices we dispel the cloud. Get rid of desires. We can't do that all of a sudden, but we can do it little by little. And maybe someday that cloud is uplifted, is lifted a little or removed a little, and then in a flash we get the light, and then the cloud again comes. But if you have got a glimpse, it is a great help. As a matter of fact, spiritual life begins only after some good glimpse. Once Sono Swami said, I would like to see a ghost. He said, why? He was asked why. He said, well, then I would know there is something other than this physical world. And about the light, I tell you, an actual incident. We had in our monastery, I guess he is still living. He was then a brahmacharian. His eyes were awfully bad, and some doctor gave him thick glasses. And he was given a nickname Searchlight. You see, his name was Searchlight with thick glasses. And then one day he went to Calcutta, his glasses were changed, and he made a most touching remark. He said, I quite forgot there's so much light in the world. Those were wrong glasses. Didn't give him the light properly. He said very touchingly, I quite forgot there's so much of light in the world. So John, that's the fact, there's so much of light in the world. But we must have the correct glasses. from one point of view, all our spiritual disciplines form part of a great cleansing process. What the Christian mystics calls, purgation, purification. Patanjali calls also this Shuddhi, is a process of purification. Whole thing, all these various steps of yoga or meditation is a process of purification. Once Ramakrishna in a deep spiritual mood said, why should I meditate? Why should he meditate? Why should he think of God? He was feeling the presence of God. But so long as we don't feel the divine presence, we must think of that. We must brood over that. We must imagine that. Let us visualize that. As I said, all these imaginations are based on something that is real, and someday they will take us to the reality. And we should always bear in mind that imaginations and imaginations, some imaginations take us nearer to the truth. Other imaginations take us farther away from the truth. But when we meditate on the Supreme Spirit, or when we meditate on the inner light, that inner light is there. If only you could see it. Once in a while you get a little glimpse. That's the principle of life. That's the principle of existence. That's the principle of consciousness. That's the principle of joy too. It is there, if only you could feel it. So all our disciplines, spiritual practices, selfless work, of course, is included. All these are meant for purifying our mind and heart. And when this purification is attained, or to the extent this purification is attained, the inner light shines. It is there. One of the great disciples of Chaitanya once said, in the firmament of my heart, the eternal sun is always shining. There is no morning, there is no evening, there is no noon. When am I to do my formal spiritual practice? The idea is this: in the morning one does one's sandhya, and then noon, and in the evening. And he says, there is no morning, no noon and evening for me. The sun is always shining. That's the experience of a man of the highest illumination. So about the sun, there is no doubt, sun is there. Sun is never clouded. Now these days we know, if we can pierce to the cloud, just to help of an aeroplane, if you go above the clouds, sun from our side, on this side of the cloud appears to be hidden from view, clouded, sun is never clouded. So there are two aspects of those who are in ignorance and aspects of those who have the knowledge. Sun is never clouded, but it appears to be. And so long as it appears to be clouded, we must do something so that we may pierce to the cloud. And all spiritual practices are meant for that. So today on this Bhagavat Charanam is the remember the Lord, think of Him constantly. Fill up all the idle moments of the day. Instead of allowing the mind to wander from one useless thing to another, let us fill up the vacant moments of our life, and there are many, many moments. Maybe we repeat the divine name, think of the Lord in some way. An hour and 2 hours spiritual practice will not do much good, unless we maintain a little of that mood throughout the day as much as we can. That's why just as before we take our physical breakfast, let us have little meditation, our spiritual breakfast. And just as the breakfast will nourish us for some time, so also the spiritual breakfast will nourish us for some time. It is all over now, but show your
He's
making.
bringing in the big guns.
It's all over now.
Well, Swami, are the Western monasteries as they are they expected to live up to the ideal of the monasteries in India? And if so, then what is the ideal in India? That is, for instance, in this country, there hasn't been any pattern of life set up in the monasteries, so that as one lives here, the only pattern comes from day-to-day experience. I mean, there isn't any form set up at all.
Well, to some extent, forms will be set up in due course. You see, till now, we have been in our pioneering period, when we remain true to the spirit, but we do not care always for the forms. You see, and then later on, as this pioneering period is over, of course we should stick to the spirit, but also the forms coming. So we are really in a period of transition, and things are taking more and more a definite shape in due course. But even this form should not be something that can hurt the spirit in any way. We are just entering the second phase of our work.
Well, how about in India? I mean, what is some of the, how are the monasteries run there, more or less?
Well, someday you go and see for yourself.
Yeah.
We'd have to go to Buko first, I think.
For a while.
I think what he has perhaps in mind is some practical ideas and hints for the development of Trabuco of the monastery.
No, I mean,
Did you go to Trabuco before?
oh yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't lived there, but I've been down once.
Oh, you have been down there once in a while. Well, so far as we are concerned, our forms are just in the process of making, but the spirit is there.
That you speak for all of India.
No, yes, in India, of course, we have our tradition.
That's what I mean, there's no tradition here.
Tradition is to be made. That's the thing. That's the trouble. Tradition is to be made. Is to be created.
And one little
What
tip
basic
is
foundation would you establish or think would be advisable to set?
Well, for the monastic life, chastity, poverty, obedience, all these three, the eternal principles. But they have to be adapted to some extent according to modern conditions. Now take for instance, we had the old systems of yoga. When you read Karma Yoga or read the Bhakti Yoga or read the Jnana Yoga or read the Raja Yoga, some were this in a way exclusive paths. And now, to suit our modern world, what Swami Vivekananda stressed is the ideal is represented in our symbol. If you read the Prabhupada Bharata, Swamiji speaks of, explains the symbol a little. Now, here he is having an ideal of harmony between the yogas. He is having a harmony between our thinking, feeling and willing. That swan, it is really Rajahamsa, is a kind of is called, is Raja is functions, the king goose, not the silly goose. Is the king goose. And that's the symbol of the soul. And you see the sun ahead. Sun stands for the light of knowledge, it stands for Jnana Yoga. And there is the lotus. Lotus stands for the path of devotion. As one progresses in one's spiritual life, the lotus that was in the form of a bird and was turning down rises upwards and the lotus blooms. So here, the lotus has bloomed, that is, one is established in the path of devotion. And then there is the serpent. The latent spiritual power, the Kundalini, has been awakened. The serpent that was coiled up now is awakened and has raised its hood. That is, all the spiritual potentialities are manifest. And what is the swan doing? It is swimming. Did you ever find a swan getting wet and getting drowned? No. That represents detachment.